Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. I am your host, Eva Andrade, and I've got special guest, Pastor Daniel Kaneshiro from the shelter. And we're going to be talking about homelessness in Hawaii and what is the Christian response to homelessness and how there is one ministry that is shining the light in this very area. So let's chat about that. Welcome to the show today, Daniel.
Thank you for having me. I'm just humbly honored.
Well, you're humbly honored, and I'm humbly blessed because, when I'm driving on the freeway and I look up to First Assembly of God, I'm always mindful that, the ministry that you're involved in was a birth child, right, of First
Yeah.
Assembly of God there on Red Hill. And so the, I have to, before I let you tell your testimony, a lot of people don't know this. So I am Catholic, but I am a born again Catholic, and I like to tell people my testimony of how I was introduced to Jesus in this personal way. Now to be fair, I grew up in the church. Um, we read the Bible. I knew who Jesus was. I did experience Jesus from a young child time. But it was interesting because when I was a teenager, this was in the late 70s. I started to really think that there had to be more to this Jesus, and I wanted to get to know him in a way that was deeper and more profound, and I just was searching. And I met the pastor there at First Assembly of God, and I want to say was it Hano Hano? Was it Pastor Hano Hano that was there?
Could have been before my time.
And it was interesting because we built a relationship. At that time, the charismatic renewal in the Catholic Church was growing, and there were a lot of people involved. And we built up this great relationship with First Assembly of God there on Red Hill, and it was there that I really got introduced to things that were outside of the norm, like the praise and the worship and all
Mm.
of that. And so I'm really grateful to the beacon of light that First Assembly of God is there in Red Hill. So, thank you so much for allowing me to share that. But I want to know about Daniel Kaneshiro. Who are you? And, let our listeners and our viewers know a little bit about you and how you got involved in this ministry we're going to be talking about today.
Great. Okay. Well, my story starts out in the country town of Waihawa, in the center of Oahu. And it starts before I was born. It's funny. My mom was 3 months pregnant with me. My dad was a pastor at a non-denominational church right outside Schofield and Wheeler. And he was preaching about missions. But he goes, how can I preach about missions if I've never been on a mission trip? So he and my mom went to Okinawa's missionaries from Wahiawa. My mother was 3 months pregnant with me, so I was actually born in Okinawa. When I was 5 years old, they returned back for a furlough, but they actually never went back to Okinawa. But my roots are in Okinawa, and one day I hope to go back and continue my father and mother's legacy on reaching the people of Japan. So what happened was I came back and of course, Hanabata days, everything was church. Before I could even talk, I'm listening to my father's sermons, et cetera, et cetera. And so I went to the private school that was part of the church there, King's School in Wahiawa, till sixth grade. And after sixth grade, I had to go to public school. So I went to Wahiawa Intermediate School. And it was at that time, like some people stay on the straight and narrow, but I went crooked. And I discovered that there was a road out there with smoking and everything else. So for about 40 years, I was away from God. And it was sad because my dad and mom were in the ministry, and I'm sure my dad needed help. But I was doing totally opposite of what I was supposed to be doing. And so what happened was I was in the computer industry. I'm not a techie. I think you've mentioned that you're a techie. I like the marketing side. So I take what people can do with tech and make things easier. And then I want to convey that to the people that can save time. Like before you had calculators, then all of a sudden you had spreadsheets and VisiCalc and Lotus and now Excel. So that was my part, the fascination of marketing. So as I was away from God all these years, I knew that God would never depart, but I knew that I was intentionally trying to go the opposite way, like Jonah. And so it was, I believe, in 2011. Oh, what happened was I was at Sprint for 15 years, but halfway, about 7 years, I found God again. And that's a story in itself. But I said, God, do you want me to quit my job and go into full-time ministry like I saw my father doing? And he said, no, stay there. And I go, stay here? I've been a prodigal son all these years, and you want me to stay there working? So he kept me there at Sprint for another 8 years to do marketplace ministry. And I said, wow, I can be a testimony without being in a church, because this is where all the people are anyway that need God. So previously, before Christ, if I saw someone coming in on a Monday with crutches, I would say, oh, what happened? They said, oh, I sprained or whatever. And I said, oh, I'll help you feel better. But from the halfway point, I would say, why don't we go in this conference room and let me say a prayer for you? And so that began Marketplace Ministry. In December, or actually it was April, I believe, of 2011, the Japan tsunami hit. And I was just glued to my television set, channel flipping from CNN to Fox, whatever, and just in amazement with all these waves bringing in these boats, multiple miles indoors. And then about 45 hours after just watching, glued to the TV, I had to apologize to God. I said, God, I'm so sorry. I'm just looking at the images, but these people are dying without God. Are you telling me that Japan will finally open up to God? And so it was amazing. During the weekend, I got an email from my corporate Western region office saying that if anybody is thinking of leaving the company, we're going to reorganize Hawaii. So I got a chance to put in a severance request. So I was paid for 9 months without working. I got a chance to go on a China missions trip, and I came back, and First Assembly gave me an opportunity to work because of my background in working with government contracts and et cetera, when I was in the technology market. They thought I could handle facilities. So if you look at the First Assembly of God Red Hill campus, you see all the PV panels, the solar panels on the roof. So I got to do projects like that. And then in 2015, Pastor Cole said, it was in the middle of the homeless crisis in Kaka'ako. And he goes, I want to create a church for the homeless. And at that time, we were going to do a mobile church and bring it to Kaka'ako. But all of a sudden, they were dispersed and the sidewalk sweeping and all that. And so he said, I want to create a shelter. The mayor at that time invited all the pastors in and said, homelessness is a problem. We have a sample site on Sand Island with shipping containers. I want each of your churches to put a shipping container on your campuses. But of course, many churches didn't have their own campus. They were meeting in cafeterias. And we had our own campus, but we also had a private school. So that wouldn't work. And God was speaking to Pastor Cole saying, I want to create a shelter. And so he Googled shelter to make sure that we could call it the shelter. And he came across a company called intershelter.com that makes those igloo-looking domes that the moms and the kids are in now. And so that was the beginning of the concept. It took us 2.5 years to get a permit. And we wanted to do it the right way because we knew that if and when it was successful, we wanted to replicate that on the Waianae Coast, other states. And in fact, there's people from other states looking at our model for the mainland as well. So before I continue, though, I think there's a video that we can show that gives a highlight of what the shelter is, and then we can get more into the details.
Absolutely. Because as you always say, now that I'm getting to know you, right, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So
Exactly.
we will be right back.
A mom needs a helping hand, a rock on which to stand, to build her life again. Et como mãe to the shelter, a calm in the midst of storm. The children safe and warm. Take refuge with God alone. Et como mãe to the shelter.
Those were absolutely lovely pictures. And I'm sure that as you're looking at them, you're probably thinking about, all of the work, the ministry, just all the hands and hearts that it takes to do something like this. But, so what are you thinking when you're seeing these pictures?
I'm just amazed, and I'm amazed that I'm in the middle of this because I didn't wake up one morning and say, "Hello, pick me. I want to do homeless projects." And so here I am, and not stuck in the middle, but I'm honored to be used by God. And so the first part of the video that you saw our development of kahulu and kanioi. They look like manapuas. But the neat thing is we can put these up in a few hours, and they're fiberglass, so they're not rusting like metal containers. And if we need to move them, we can take them down really quickly as well. They're impervious to water because it's like umbrella upon umbrella, so gravity brings the water down. But also for high winds, of which homeless tents would just blow away, the wind actually pushes it down. So it's a neat concept to use for the homeless. So we also showed in the video, we're working on Shelter 2.0. First Assembly is the host church. They're letting us use a basil farm to expand. So we have 12 domes in Kahalu, of which 9 are used for single moms and their kids. And the Waianae site is projected to have 35 domes. So we're just trying to get our finger on, wow, how is that going to look like? And somebody came for a tour. I invite you to come maybe first part of next year to see it. And as the people saw the tour, they went back. They were part of a big estate, and they wanted to leave a legacy for Hawaii. Money was no issue. So guess what they did, Eva? They donated 47 and a half acres of land to
Wow.
the shelter in Makaha, right next to
Wow.
Makaha Resort. So that's going to be a huge project. We have G70, our architectural company partner, Francis Oda's company, just working with us. So we want to do something that will create a paradigm shift in how we address poverty. And so once again, it's a huge project. But back to Kahalu, let me share a little bit about who the moms are. So to qualify to be at the shelter, you have to be a single mom with up to four kids. You have to be mentally stable. You know, you and I are crazy in our own ways, but you cannot be crazy to hurt somebody or to kill somebody. You have to be stable in that way. You have to be drug-free and alcohol-free. You say, well, isn't that where the problem is with homeless? Yes, you know, the problem of homelessness is so big, but we have to help those that want to help themselves. And they're not going to be neutralized by going backwards when somebody's trying to help them and they go back to their drugs or the drinking. So they have to be drug-free, alcohol-free. They have to be able and willing to work. Many people are able to work, but they're just lazy. But you have to work to qualify to get a housing voucher. Otherwise, we'll be a homeless hospice. People will stay forever. But we want to be a healthy stream where moms come in, move out, get their own apartments, and open the doors for new moms to come in. And finally, faith-based. You say, well, why do you have to be faith-based to help the homeless? Well, ask the government. They might have a good perspective. They've been trying to address homelessness for a while, but we're realizing that it's not only a matter of housing, it's the transformation of the heart. If you've been in Hawaii for a while, there was a Japanese billionaire by the name of Kawamoto that owned all these mansions in Diamond Head, Kahala area. But he used them as investments, so nobody was living there. The homeless found out about them, and they went in. And before long, they vandalized them. The swimming pools, the statues, the paint all over. So if a beautiful housing structure was the solution to homelessness, they would have been in nirvana. But what did they do? They defaced them. So we realized that for our moms, we want to create great citizens of accountability, respect, and responsibility so that when they leave the shelter, they become pillars of society versus becoming more of a problem.
I think that's why it's so important that the church rises in this area because
Yeah,
you're right. We can make band-aids for all
yeah,
kinds of problems that are
yeah,
in society right now, right? But one of the strengths of the church, and I say this so many times on the show, so the people that listen to this all the time are going, oh, here she goes again. But here's the thing. The church is one of the first groups to rise when there is a crisis.
yes,
And when things like the fires in Lahaina, you talked about the tsunami in Japan. There's something about the heart of the church that when these things happen, that the first thing we ask is, how can we get involved? How can we make a difference, right? And so you have pastors and you have churches that are saying, let's do it. Sometimes it's just simply providing money, right? Because there are churches that collect money and then they give to these wonderful ministries. Which, by the way, as I'm thinking about this, if you're listening and watching this show, and you want to invest in the ministry of the shelter, we're going to put the link right below for you to go to the website to visit them. We will also provide in the description a way you can contact Daniel and to find out more about the ministry, because not everybody is called to be that missionary that goes into the field, but everybody's called to do something, right? And so I love that what you did is you heard the Lord's call, and going back to your testimony, right? Lord, am I going to be this missionary that's going to go to Japan or go to wherever the Lord calls you, right? But Hawaii is a mission field too. And there are people right here in our backyard that need us. And this idea of the shelter, to where single moms can go, and it's a blessing to me. I was a single mom. I raised my two daughters living in a very low income area. My neighbors, for the most part, were great people, but the area that I lived in was very scary.
um,
Once we'd go in our house at night, I wouldn't let my daughters out at night because the people that would hang in the parking lot. So the idea that the church is saying we're going to have a safe place, for these moms to come temporarily, right, so they can get situated, that we can help them, and we could come alongside them, and to not just help them with housing, but you mentioned, that there might be things that they're experiencing that the church can help them with, whether it's suicide ideation, right? People may be feeling depressed. For women, when their self esteem drops, to a low place. They're not going to give the very best of themselves to their kids, but the church can rise in this area by providing community. So I love that. But I want to ask you a question about process, because you did say that that most of your these temporary I like to call them igloos. I know they're not really igloos, but they kind of have that look to them.
Yeah.
So most of them, right, are single women. So do you have a few extra for people outside of that group?
So when we went through the permit process, our conditional use permit specifically identified single women with children, specifically. And we did it for the innocent keiki. We were going through COVID, right? And you hear the expression, oh, the new normal. But we didn't want these poor children to accept that living in their car with cockroaches crawling over them, or living in a tent that leaks rainwater, and then the next day they have to go to school. We didn't want them to accept that that's a normal that they have to accept. So we wanted to do this for the keiki and, of course, the single moms. Now, the reason why we are starting that way is we wanted to create a model that works. And the model is not everybody has a full igloo with kitchen and a shower, sink, and toilet in it. There's shared facilities for restrooms, and there's a shared kitchen as well, just so that we can use the economies of scale. So although it started as a ministry of First Assembly, in 2019, we became a 501c3 because there's corporations like banks that won't donate to a church, but they'll donate to a nonprofit. Also, collaboration, kingdom collaboration, it's critically important. The reason for that is, even the Catholic Church, and we have Methodist Church, we have community churches, they can't afford to create a whole project like this. But what they've done was they donated $12,000 for a dome. And so each church donated, and we would collaborate the management of it so that they didn't have to worry about it. So in the initial project in Kahului, although it's on the windward side, we had a church in Waianae donate for one of the domes. We had a church in Mililani, New Hope Central Oahu, donate for a dome. Downtown Chinatown, New Life, Honolulu donated. Inspired Church. All these different faith-based churches knew that we needed to do something for the kingdom, not sit in our own silos anymore. And that's why I think this is a successful project. But I wanted to talk about the faith base and how it contributes to the solution. So in addition to parenting classes and personal finance on a single mom's income, we do spiritual classes that teaches values such as forgiveness. Now, when we get a mom that wants to come in, the first thing we ask is, do you have family that you can live in? Oh, no, because, we're fighting, da-da-da-da. So what happens is when our moms sit in classes on forgiveness, we've had several moms, because the homelessness is not only from local moms, it's from moms that come from the mainland and their boyfriend or the husband finds a different girlfriend in Hawaii and leaves the poor mom with the little kids struggling, no way to get back to the mainland. So we talk about forgiveness, and they say, Daniel, my mom's going to come to Waikiki for a week. Can we go stay with her? We said, yeah, go. So the mom goes to stay with the mom in Waikiki. And you know what the first thing the mom says to their mom that's visiting? Mommy, I'm sorry. When we left Texas or Miami, we thought you were giving us a hard time, but now we realize you cared for us. And so please forgive me. They reconcile. And part of the solution is sending them back to the mainland where they're now part of their family, which is the way it should be. Another perspective of faith-based, we're in Thanksgiving, right? In a couple of days, we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving. We teach them that in the midst of your journey, in the midst of not having everything that you want, let's be thankful. Let's be thankful for what we do have and that God brought you to the shelter. So we have moms as of this week, last week, serving. They would go to different events, and out of their need, they're serving others as well, so that as God ministers to them, they can also minister to other people as well. And finally, because we're in the season of celebration, Christmas is coming up. Guess what? Jesus was homeless when he was born in that manger in Bethlehem. And look at how he changed the world. And so when we do for the little kids, the innocent kids, we don't know the potential to change not only lives around them in Hawaii, but wherever God calls them to. So that's why we are focusing on the little kids and the moms. However, when we go through Waianae, we're going to expand our arms of love to kupuna, because kupuna need our help too. They're going to be on this earth only just for a few more years. We need to show them the love that maybe they didn't see so far. So moms with kids and kupuna is our next arena.
Well, yes, because what I'm seeing in the public policy arena is more and more parents, grandparents are stepping up to raise their grandkids.
Yeah.
So, that this idea of protecting our kapuna is also protecting our next generations. The church cannot stay on the sidelines any longer, because Jesus is the only answer to all the societal problems there are out there, because the church is the only group of people that does what it does because of the heart and wanting to help people. Now, not to say that there are some great people out there that do not know the Lord, right? That also work very hard in these ministries. I don't want to, cast them aside. But if you're a Christian, that's my point. If you're telling people that you serve this mighty God, right, that Jesus is the one you follow, then naturally you're going to be going outside into the community, because that's what Christ called us to do, right? To preach the gospel at all times. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be listening. So, if people are listening to this and it's around Christmas time, because, people view these and listen to these shows, well, listening on the radio, they're hearing it, one time, but people that are watching on YouTube, this may be around Christmas time. And I want you to consider, for those of you that have the ability, consider giving a gift to the shelter for Christmas, in memory of Santa Claus. And bear with me, people. I know you're going, oh no, she's going into Santa Claus. But Santa Claus was a real person, right? He was based on a real person who wanted to serve the community, right? To bring joy to the children by bringing these little gifts that they put in the shoes or whatever and all of that. And one of the most powerful things I've ever seen was an image of Santa Claus kneeling before the manger. I know that's not a reality, people. I don't need emails and phone calls telling me. But the point is that we do what we do because of who we serve, right? And that's the important thing. So in these last few minutes, I'm curious, do you have a story of hope that you might want to share with people that are listening? And the other thing too is, I'm sure people are listening or watching this going, you know what? I know someone who maybe could benefit from the shelters, some young woman who's maybe struggling with homelessness. So maybe, after you tell me your story of hope, you can kind of tell us, how that would work if we know a young woman with children who might benefit from your services.
Okay, I'm going to speak fast because I have a lot of things to say in summary. First thing, this is Thanksgiving, so I'm so thankful that finally we're partnering with government. Several years ago when we went to government, they said, oh, separation of church and state. But, at that time, we didn't want to fight a battle, a legal battle, et cetera. But there's three precedents. First, churches don't have their own buildings, so they meet in school cafeterias. That's State Department of Education. The prisons, they welcome praise and worship and the inspirational word from the churches to come into the prisons. Where's the separation of church and state? And your federal tax dollar and mine actually builds churches called chapels on military bases, and we pay for the salaries of the pastors called chaplains. So, the state government, city, we're working hand in hand, and they cannot buy the Bibles, but they can help the infrastructure for a new project like in Waianae. So in this week of Thanksgiving, I'm just thankful that God is opening up opportunities for government and faith-based not to be against each other, but to work together. In the Bible, Joseph became number 2 in Egypt under the Pharaoh. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, after they stood the ground for their religious freedoms, they were still promoted in Babylon. So we can work together. And with this homeless solution, I look forward to that. One big success story is we had a mom with her kids, and she has an intense story on her own. But after getting a job, her job was with IHS, with Connie Mitchell. And so she was involved in finding jobs for the people that were homeless out of IHS. But guess what? She is now returned to the shelter as our program administrator. She manages the vetting and the operation of the shelter. So God can take lives that are hopeless and bring them back in. And many of our moms are the ones that give the strongest testimonies on behalf of the shelter. So as we look forward to the holiday seasons and celebrate the birth of Jesus as well, we thank God that just a small portion of the homeless solution we can be thankful for.
And so what is your website in case somebody listening has to write this down really quick if they want to find out more information? Where can they go?
It's theshelter.org, theshelter.org.
And you did say you're a 501c3. So for those
Yes.
of you that feel like you want to make a donation, sure, you can write it off on your taxes. But how about knowing that the gift that you're giving could just change someone's life forever? And maybe that's
one thing great about our ministry, like you shared your personal perspective, everyone can relate to our charter and our mission because everybody had a mother, or everybody sees their mother struggling or their sister. And so let's come together and do it for the keiki and the moms. The moms, you talk about abortion, right? I give them so much credit because they didn't want to get abortions. They wanted to keep their kids. And now let's come next to them and help raise their kids for the strength that they have.
Amen. And I know for the rest of you, as you're driving along on the road and you pass and you see, First Assembly of God up there on the right, make sure you're praying for that church and all the churches that pastors are leading, because the church is going to change the world. And each of you are part of that change. So we will see you all next week. Make sure you like this video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you know every time we're uploading a new video. And we thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Eva. Aloha.
Mahalo, everybody.